So I'm talking with Elizabeth and Irvin Limor.
Limor.
Say it again.
Limor.
And it is May the 20th, 1990. Tell me who you were by name before the war and where you lived. And I can start with you.
All right.
Your full name?
My full name was, at home they called me Ijek. And if I was called to the Torah, well, I was called as Yitzchak Nachum.
Uh-huh. And what was your family name?
Lipschitz.
Lipschitz. Now that was a Polish name.
That was Jewish Polish name.
Jewish Polish name. So that anyone seeing the spelling of the name would know that you were Jewish and Polish.
Right.
And what city did you live in?
In Częstochowa.
Where is that in Poland?
That was in southwestern Poland.
And Elizabeth?
My name is even more difficult. It's Dobrzyński, spelled Dobrzyński. It was typical Polish name, which originated from the place where my father was born. I don't know really the city where he was born, but in this region of the land of Dobrzyński.
Mm-hmm.
So this originated. The people who lived there got the name. And
so one would not know from your name that you were Jewish,
no.
But Polish.
That's right. I had a teacher who was Polish who had the same name.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I am from the city of Lodz, which was the Polish Manchester. It was rather the central Poland, about 60 miles, if I am not mistaken, from Warsaw, the second largest city.
So you two, of course, did not know each other
other
before the war at all.
The German city.
Irwin, you mentioned your name, which Yitzchak was your given name?
Yitzhak.
Yitzchak. Yeah.
Were you an observant Jewish family when you grew up?
Yes.
Did you get a Jewish education?
Yes. Insofar that I had at my bar mitzvah at the synagogue.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And was yours
I am very sorry to say that girls in Poland, Jewish girls, did not get religious upbringing.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I knew that I am Jewish, we celebrated the holidays, but as for education, the girls did not get any. I did not know to read Hebrew, I did not know the letters, and I had very little all-around religious education.
What about your other?
We were rather traditional.
Uh-huh. What about your other education?
My education stopped. No, I could. In Poland was such a system. Either you could finish the middle school, and you got a diploma, or you had to go to the two more classes, 2 more grades, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which would be the equivalent of matriculation here. So I finished only till I was 15.
All right. And your husband, how many years of education?
Well, I finished high school. I went to high school.
This was it.
And that's it.
In Poland, the Jews had very limited possibilities to go to universities. I had a very dear friend whom I met during the war, and he studied medicine. He was one of very few Jews who was admitted to the university in Warsaw, Krakow, I don't remember. He was 3 times thrown down all the steps by his colleagues, so-called. It was a very, very big anti-Semitism in Poland. So it was you see, my brother, who was 10 years older, had to go to study in France. He was 17 years old, and you sent out a 17-year-old abroad because he couldn't study in Poland.
Elizabeth, you remember as a child acts against you, toward you, that because of you being Jewish?
Before the Germans came, yes.
Before the Germans came.
Let's say, if I would not bring my copybook or my homework on Monday to school, I would not be excused. While a Gentile girl came and said to the teacher, I couldn't make it because I didn't have paper to write on, and only the Jewish stores were open, and I would not go to a Jewish store. And she was excused.
Mm-hmm. Did you, Irvin, experience acts against you?
Yes, plus fighting every time on the way to school. There were fights on the way. The fights were one-sided, because if I went to school with, it was a private Jewish gymnasium, Dr. Axel was the
Doesn't matter.
owner and the director of the school. And on the way to school, a bunch of
Polish boys.
Polish high school students would jump us and we tried to beat up as much as we could.
Mm.
And we tried to defend ourselves as much as we could. So that was a normal way of going to school. There was never a walk to school without a fight. I don't remember a day like that.
What was the year of your birth?
1922.
22. And the year,
Same.
both
I am
born...
older, half a year than Irvin.
What is that again?
He married an older woman. I am half a year older than Irvin.
Half a year older than he is. So both of you were still in high school when the Germans invaded Poland?
No, I would be equivalent, but I went already to designer school.
Aha.
I learned profession. Only of my class of high school, only 2 girls went abroad to study. They were really extremely bright, because it was really not, for girls was not very important to finish high school, because what would they do later? They would be bookkeepers, learn bookkeeping. You know, there was no higher education, no possibility for higher education, only abroad.
Before the war, do you both remember talk of a war coming in your family?
Yes, because the radio was full of Mr. Hitler screeching, and we knew that something is coming, definitely. But nobody, you know, as long as you are at your own home, you don't think about running away. Why do you have to go away? They probably will not come here, and this is your place. So why should you go away? Where?
No, we had that advantage that Dr. Axel, the principal of a high school, owner of a high school, was very often talking about it. And he had made plays that we took part in, political plays. And he committed suicide before the Germans came in. So much, so sure was he what was going to happen. He and his wife committed suicide before the Germans came in, maybe a day before we came in.
What did your father do, Irwin?
My father didn't have any education, but without education, he started a shoe factory, and he was a very successful man.
He was a successful businessman.
Do you remember him talking about a war coming
Yes.
and what would happen?
He will know what to happen when he was not, never, nobody was thinking about something like that can happen. I mean, that was a complete surprise.
And what did your father do?
My father died when I was not 6.
Oh,
And this was a fatherless family. My mother and my sister, I was the youngest in the family, were at home. And my brother was abroad already after studying. He was abroad. So we hoped, when something happened, that nothing will happen to him. Unfortunately, things happened to him too, because he was in Belgium, in France, and then he ran to Belgium. And we thank God that we met after the war. Unfortunately, we have been only 5 years together, and he died here in Nashville. This is why we came here.
I see.
You probably knew his son even.
I probably knew.
He's my brother's son.
Oh,
His name was Dobrin, John
yes,
Dobrin.
yes,
Huh?
yes.
A redhead.
So tell me then how your life changed when the war started.
The first thing was, my father was not the type of man that sits down and takes whatever happens. He always tried to do something about it, whatever he could. So the decision was that we will run away from Częstochowa, because Częstochowa was close to the German border, and we saw already Polish soldiers wounded and taken to hospitals and so on. So we started on a Friday, I think it was, we started off walking to the east. The German body was on the west, so we walked to the east. And I remember we came to a little village, well, under the shtetl. And there was a Jewish village. 90% of the people there were Jewish. And when the Germans marched in over there, they started to divide food, to give food, to hand out food. So good they were. And now personally, from the history of the family, I was taught that the German people were honest people and people with whom to count. The reason for it was that my mother's sister was, during the First World War, was killed by a Polish peasant with an axe. And they intended to make a bigger
Pogrom.
a bigger pogrom, but then the Germans came in and they stopped it.
Pogrom is mass assault.
Yes.
And the Germans stopped it. So Mother was showing the Germans as people with feeling of justice.
Because during the First World War, the Germans were fighting the Russians, and the Russians were the enemies. The Germans were the good guys.
So they had expected the Germans to behave
Yeah.
in a decent
Yeah.
way. And what happened?
So as we were running away, there was no communication, there was no trains or so. So on the way we caught a little wagon, but the peasant was riding towards the east. So we bought a place on his wagon, and so it would give us a ride. And so we were riding with him for, I would say, about 25 miles or so. And we saw the Polish soldiers wounded, constantly coming from the front. And when they came, German airplanes, and they started bombarding the civil population on the way.
The roads.
On the road, just walking and riding wagons or whatever. Everybody was bumped with air. And there was one neighbor or so of that guy whose wagon we were riding, and he intended to rob us. And we stopped on the way in a forest. He took out a knife and demanded money. We resisted, and when came the German planes and bombarded, and also we were shooting with machine gun. So while we were shooting a machine gun, our luck was that the guy with a gun, with a knife, got a bullet before anything happened. So we were saved us from this situation by the Germans.
What do you remember about the outbreak of the war?
I remember sitting in the basement. I remember when the Germans came. I remember the men like Irvin in our city coming back in masses because they were already pushed back. They didn't have where to go. And then I remember the bombardment, and we were sitting in the basement.
Are you referring to artillery or airplanes?
Airplanes, yeah. And so we were sitting in the basement. I remember my mother was a very strong person, and she was holding my hand, and I was shivering. I was very much afraid of war, which I once saw in a movie, the First World War, and I was afraid. And I remember we didn't have any food. We didn't have time to take from our home food. So we were sitting there without food with other people. We were not the only one in this position. And funny how many things escape my mind. I don't remember anymore. I remember when the Germans first came, and I thought that this was September the 3rd. I read in the Holocaust Encyclopedia that it was September the 8th. I would swear that it was September the 3rd, and I think that I am right. But, many things escape my memory, and yet, a few days ago, I talked to my grandson. He asked me questions about it, and I told him. And suddenly something came to me, something that I absolutely did not remember all the years. We talk about dehumanization, how the Germans started to dehumanize us, and slowly, day by day, and worse. And suddenly it came to me. So when we will talk about this, I will tell you about it. Because this already happened in the concentration camp. So I don't know if you want to talk about it. We don't remember, don't remember.
All right, so why don't I just say to one and then the other, tell
Fine,
your story.
Fine.
Okay.
And
It will take double time
it
because
will
there are
take
two
double
people.
time. But you two can interact with each other
Yeah.
in the course of that. All
It's
right.
good, thank you, because I wanted really to see it here with something. The reason for it, I don't know, but that's what happened in our town, Częstochowa. That happened in every town, time-wise, Monday. Monday was the time when the Germans were throwing the first,
This was the Black Monday.
yeah, they were throwing the first feeling of
Fright. Yeah.
on the population. So I went into churches and forced all people to go into the churches. Now, of course, Jews were not forced into the churches. Jews could go into synagogues and be killed into the synagogues. Not, they didn't have to go to the church to get killed. And recently we walked into a church and a machine gun fire just killed the whole population. So that, and the story was, they put outside a placard,
A notice.
a notice that somebody did
Post.
hurt a German soldier, and that's the reason that happened. And any time a German soldier will get hurt, that's the way it will be the response of a German Wehrmacht.
Go ahead and tell us your story of what happened to you and your family after the invasion.
All right. So we ran away as far as we could, and the general of Judea, of course, caught up with us. And we came back home. We left at home, in our home, we left a cousin of my mother, and he was supposed to take care of everything at home. He did what the best he could, and of course there were thefts and the removal of materials and from a factory and so on. It's not his fault, but that's the way it was. And then one Saturday it was, the Germans came in and told all Jews to come out for work. And my dad wanted to hide, and mother said, if they catch you, they kill you. So it's,
May I interrupt? Irvin
Yes.
forgot that his father was taken in the beginning of the war to work, and this was very cold winter, and he caught pneumonia, and he died. So at this time when he says the father was not around anymore. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I went out to work with that also, but I was a young guy, so the cold weather did not hurt me as much as. And my father was at that time approximately about 40 years old at that time. We have seen him. And he got sick, and I remember when he came back, he couldn't do nothing but stand by the oven and warm himself. And so I got sicker and sicker. And the doctor made
See? Can I help out?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
And his father died. Needless to say that they could not go to the cemetery, and this was it. And this is then when Irvin spoke about that the cousin took over and did what he could, but he couldn't. Meanwhile, people were starting to hide. This I know from what Irvin told me. He has a little bit loss of memory, so but I remember it. And he built a hiding place. Was it in the house or on the attic? I don't remember.
in the attic above our apartment. We had that attic belonged to our apartment. So I built over there. I have a special ability when it comes to hiding or building or things like that. So I did build over there a hiding place, a bunker. And mother prepared food for a year. And what I did over there, I made a drawer like. The drawer was made out of brick. The same bricks I took out from the opening that I made. So with those same bricks, I made a drawer that we could push in and push out. And when it was brought back in, nobody could see it, but there is any entrance over there. A good hiding place.
Now, when was that they built the hiding place? 1940?
That
early?
was before. That was
I assume
before
so.
the actions.
This must have been in 1940. You know, it's so hard really to concentrate and to remember
Yes.
the dates. So many things happen in between.
Yes.
A new life now. And I cannot
At the same
explain
time,
it, how
show you where you
I
lived.
can't remember.
They come one day come in 5 Gestapo men and tell the mother that they were told that we are rich people and they want us to give anything that we have of value.
A special letter.
No,
A letter at this time they took.
no.
Okay.
Anyhow, so somewhere word got to them that I was making business with gold coins, which was true in it. I was dealing with gold coins. Of course I was dealing so that nobody will know about it, but still it got to them. So they came in and we started looking for it, and I turned upside down the whole apartment.
This was before mother went in hiding.
Yeah.
Before mother went in hiding.
Yeah.
Before who went in hiding?
Mother and brother.
Aha.
And we looked for it everywhere, upside down. We turned out the apartment. We didn't find no gold coins. The gold coins were there, all right, but you didn't find them. What did I do with gold coins? We had a grandpa's
Grandfather clock.
grandfather clock.
It's nieważne.
And the grandfather clock, there was, as I said on it, as how we lived. So day of day we had to improvise. And so I made holes in those weights and substituted the holes with gold coins. So was work on gold coins, not on lead.
Anyhow, he was a supporter of the family because at this time nobody already worked and you had to live somehow.
And he did it trading in
He
gold
did it.
coins.
He was then 17 years old.
Yeah.
He was really the supporter of the
And
family.
I was I was trading and doing,
To his neighbor.
but what I was, the real support came from that since I was brought up in the factory. So I, of course, without being taught, I picked up some knowledge of it. How do you make the shoes and how do you create a profit out of them and so on.
Elizabeth, add to the story.
No, to his story I cannot, at the moment I
All right.
cannot add, because I know that then was a big ghetto was formed. That's what he told me, and that people were selected. The older people and the children were selected for that. And
Selected for the ghetto? Or
from ghetto.
From the ghetto.
They were called on roll call quasi to the marketplace, and they were to the left.
Chosen.
The people who were unable, to the right, the people who were strong, young, and these people were to be sent, later found out, to work, while the children and unable, disabled people, older people, were sent away. At this time nobody knew where. So between others, and then they found the right one. This is, I am telling you what Irvin told me.
Yes.
To the right, the young people, 18, 30, still 30, 40, maybe 50 even, but strong people. The children were put in one place. Irvin did not want to. This was after his mother and brother was already taken away. He has a vague memory of it. He knows that he came to the hiding place and they were taken away.
The hiding place that he built.
Yeah, was
they
already
hid
discovered.
there, but they were discovered.
Discovered.
Someone
Yeah,
turned
and
them
taken
in,
away.
or
Somebody turned it in.
It could be a neighbor. You don't know.
Yes, a neighbor.
but he came back looking for them, and they were gone.
They were gone.
Very
So
good.
he was with the brother that is now alive here, which is a long story because he lost him during the war, at the end of the war, and he found him later, which is another story. But he has at least one brother.
Yes.
Now,
But a ghetto was formed. When was the ghetto formed?
must have been 41, 40, the big ghetto.
Yeah.
And then selections were made from the ghetto.
Right.
No, I didn't get that.
And he was
There
living
was
in the
a-
And Irvin was sent to the munition factory, which was concentration camp Hasak. This is where after 2 years I came from another camp. Do you want me to say it?
Yes, so why don't we shift and hear
Okay.
from the outbreak of the war to this camp?
I cannot tell you day by day, but I remember, this is what I remember. The Germans came in the town, they came to our courtyard, started to call people with very loud voices, bring us water, women, bring us water to wash. So we had to bring wash bowls and water, and they washed. They undressed and they washed. They were the Herrenvolk. And they were treated as right away very brusque, very in an ugly way. Then after they washed, they came from one apartment to the other and looked for men's clothing, for men's picture. My father's picture was on the wall. Where is he? They wanted the men to be delivered to them. No, in our case, the father is not alive anymore. You are lying. Where did you hide him? But it was very, very harsh, very, you could see right away that who is the person in charge. They were in charge. And my mother wanted me to leave Lodz, my city. Go together with the young people, you will go on the Russian side, and there you will be safe. Maybe from Russia you will be able to go out of Europe. So like all the other people my age, we ran away. We ran. And I found myself close to a little city. I don't remember even the name. And from there, the people were taken to a concentration camp, but it was not as bad concentration camp as the Hasag.
As the other,
Yeah.
as the one to which...
It also was a munition factory, but it was a smaller munition factory. But we lived in very bad condition. One was called, we called it the zoo, because this must have been an old warehouse. You know, like in my imagination, it would be 3-story high. And they were shelves in the middle. They were shelves, tremendous shelves, like a room, the size of a room. They were, I believe, 6 in the height. And there where the girls were sleeping. On the boards, someone had a little bit straw, and the straw was very, very dirty. I remember when I was sent to the concentration camp, a week later we sent every day for roll call. And one day something was itching. I put away my sleeve, and there was a lice with a cross on the back, which I never saw a lice in my life, but right away I was informed that this is a louse that brings typhoid. Sure enough, a week later I was taken to the so-called hospital. The hospital was an old stable with shelves on the wall about 7 feet wide. And there were people laying, women in one room, in one part of the stable, and men in the other. We were laying one next to the other. No blankets, no thing. I had a coat from home, which I put my feet in the sleeves and covered myself always in a squatted position because it was too small to cover me all. And I remember that I was delirious. While I was delirious, I saw myself, we were taken by trucks. And I saw very vividly the way back. You know, like you turn the movie backwards, you know, rerun.
Yes.
So this, I saw me sitting on the truck and going back the same way. This was during my typhoid. It happened that the day before I went to the hospital, because the concentration camp was intact before we came. It was a selection. What was the selection? The Germans came to the hospital, and so who was very weak, who was delirious, who they saw that will not survive, they took him through on the truck. Then, for fun, they took condoms, blew them up, and attached them like balloons. This was their fun. And they took the people away, and living people they put in ditches. This is what we found out later.
You mean they buried people alive?
Buried people alive. They took alive people, buried them, threw them in. Now, the selection happened a day before I went in. After I was released, I don't remember how long I was there. Friends tried to send me some food, you know, a piece of bread. I was hungry all the time. And funny thing, that the people who didn't have any outside help, I mean, did not eat. I couldn't eat this, what was given to us, one time daily soup, but terrible soup. These people who couldn't eat it during the 2 weeks, more or less, it was 2 weeks stay. These people survived. The people who had some food. This is, you know, a paradox. These people did not survive. The people who hungered survived typhoid. Anyhow, Yeah, when I came the first day to the concentration camp, I have to go back because chronologically I cannot remember. They brought us huge kettles with soup. The soup was gray. You didn't know what was in it. Then when we started to eat, we saw that these were beets in peels, not unpeeled, with salt. This was the soup. It was really not edible. And
like liver sauce.
okay, but it looked awful, it tasted awful, and I ate it. And some girls, about 12 girls, came to me and says, "How can you eat it?" First came one, then the second. I said, "What means if I will not eat it, I will not survive? I have to eat it." "Oh, we want to be with you. You will survive." And the 12 girls, we stayed together. They wanted to be with me. Some unfortunately couldn't take it and did not survive.
Elizabeth, this camp was a munitions plant?
It was a munition plant.
Not a large camp?
It was a small camp. It had three, if I remember. One was they made produced some gas, and the people who came to the shower once a month were completely yellow. I found my school friend, young man. We recognized each other. He was completely yellow, so were the other people because it's from the gas, and none survived. And there was another. I don't remember what they did in the other so-called department in another place, but this all was one Skarżysko. This was in Skarżysko. When we came first to the factory, we were put 3 girls to a conveyor with a woman master. You would call her foreman, but it was really more. She was the master of your life and death. It was a Polish woman who was a girlfriend of one of the Germans. And we were put on a conveyor machine, and we were supposed to...
Oh, yes, we've got plenty
because
of time.
2 of us.
We've got plenty of time.
Okay.
Yeah, about the shells.
All right.
As you said about the shells, that was a big problem we had, the Germans. See, they were making shells not out of brass or copper. They were making shells out of steel. And that, of course, was pulled by the machines, was stretched. And
It was
they were
formed, I think.
Yeah.
Formed.
Yeah, by stretching. And they were cracking. The shells were cracking. So the poor girls had to look where there is a small little crack.
Okay, but the poor girls did not ever had to do with shells. What did I know about a defective shell or not? Did I ever see one? Never. Of course, we let through bad shells, but I show you only what persistence, perseverance, and inhumanity can do. We were called to the master, to the really master of your life and death, and he started to beat us between the eyes, in the nose. "You Jewish swines, you do it, you sabotage the work." We were not even told how a good shell looks or how a bad shell looks. We didn't know. But right after this we knew, or after this beating, we were so terrible beaten. This was the first day at work.
First day.
First
And
day
this
at
was
work.
done by a German
By a German.
whose girlfriend was the kind of foreman.
Yeah.
And so there was death from illness,
You see,
typhus, starvation,
right?
but you were also...
We were not in a death camp.
Yes.
But every day death occurred. I mean, not death, normal death by starvation or by old age, only by killing. Let's say that they were men who were rolling away the good shells. It was quite heavy bags, and they were rolling it away. At this time, men wore cups in the pants, and one shell fell out in a cup. And the man was taken away and killed right away. Because with the one shell, without bullet, he would kill all the German army. You see? how ridiculous it all was. They were looking for an excuse to kill. And then I remember,
Were there only women that worked in this plant?
no, but we lived, the women lived separate, the men lived separate, and we came together to work. So I said the men were doing the other works. Irvin, let's say, was working at this time in another camp, in another factory. But this was Hasak and this was Hasak, only in another
same
place.
factory, only.
Yeah. And he was working on machine that measured the powder for the bullets. But he was held in very high esteem by the Germans because it was up to him if the machines worked or not. He could say, the machine is broken, which was really not. He made it stop. So they really had to humor him. And he was known. This, you asked me if I knew him. I didn't know him, but I knew of him. This was the man who saves people.
You knew of him
Of
even
him.
when you were working in the munitions plant?
This was when I came to the other
Yes.
munition factory, to where he was working. He was known as the person who saves people, who helps people.
Irwin, were the conditions in your camp pretty much the same they were in Elizabeth's at that time?
Yeah, and just so you understand how I got into it, when I came first to that camp, I was given work as in building.
Carrying cement on his back.
And deliver bricks and whatnot. Hard work, but in winter it is a hard work. And one good thing that you won't give up. The hard work. And I will continue with that, remind you on to continue it. But I had to switch over for a moment, because when we were talking about the ghetto and how we started to make selections. At one day when there were selections made,
Yeah.
I found myself in a section of town that my parents used to live before we married. And it was a very poor section of town, dirty and in a poor section of town. And they were making a selection over at that section. And I knew the people over there because while we lived over there and I was a young boy, I was helping out with watching the kids. I was getting paid for it.
Babysitting.
Babysitting. And so while I was over there, at the street where there was the bridge.
Same version.
Yeah. And suddenly I saw three motorcycles arrive. And that was where we learned to recognize already the Germans, who is what. Gestapo had a different hat, and the
SS.
Wehrmacht, which means the army.
And
different,
SS. Stormtrooper.
Yeah, different SS. But that was regular army, Wehrmacht, standard army.
Same version.
Yeah, it's important. It's very important to me. It was very, very important. But from them, you didn't expect nothing bad, you know, because you had between them talking, Mr. Professor, Mr. Doctor. They were addressing themselves.
Each other.
All people with education. Yeah, and when they came, they started to scream. But that scream, I don't think that there's another language, the German language, that you can put out, to scream like that. All Jews out. And so all Jews started to walk out. And people were walked out. We had little children, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, maybe younger. So we had the children in a wheel.
In carriages. In carriages.
The carriages that you take children out for
So
for
they
a
were
walk.
younger children, yeah.
Yeah. So it must have been maybe 2, 3 years old
Younger.
children. They came out with them in those carriages. And when they started to scream, but the parents go home, leave the children out, and the parents have to go home. So the parents went home.
No, the parent did not go home. You don't remember. In presence of the parents, what they did.
Yeah.
What did they do?
They just individually, one by one of the soldiers walked by to the carriage, picked up a child by the legs, and walked to the wall, and stood his head in the wall.
I know how it was because it happened in our city too. And they did not take children from carriages only, they took the children from mother's arm, infants, and they did the same thing.
Killed children.
Yeah.
They killed the children, but very brutally. They took them by the legs and hit the head against the wall.
This was in the ghetto, not in the camp.
No, this was in Lodz was ghetto after I left. So I don't know much about the ghetto. This is what I
But
heard
that
after
was
the
in the
war.
ghetto.
Yeah. But what I wanted to say, you know, I come back to it, that I told you I wanted to tell you about the dehumanization.
Yes.
The dehumanization of the Jews started the first day. This was the first screeching, bring us the water. The next day was a poster, a Jew cannot walk on the street, only has to walk, not on the sidewalk, has to walk on the street. Then was a Jew has to greet a German, and when he greets by taking off the hat, he is hit. Because am I your friend that you are greeting me? But you had to do it. Sometimes a German gave you a cigarette case and said, have a cigarette. You want a cigarette? He gave you a cigarette case. When you reached for it, he slammed your fingers in the cigarette case. This was a metal, silver, usually. This was in style, the cigarette cases. And so day by day, something new came. Then they came out that we have to wear armbands. After a few weeks, I believe 2 weeks of armbands, another decree came out. We have to wear Star of David's. The Star of David, I think, I don't remember anymore if it was on the left or right side. I know only that it was front and back. And then when we came to the concentration camp, and I told this to my grandson, who was sitting here crying. We were permitted to go once a month to shower. And you know, we were so dirty. When I was in the hospital and put my fingernails, which were long because I didn't have scissors, in the straw in which people were laying and starving and dying, I just had under my nails hundreds of lice. It was terrible.
Or blood.
And so we were permitted to go to the shower in winter, barefoot, in snow, very cold.
How often? Once a week? Once a
Once
month?
a month.
Once a month.
Yeah. We tried to keep our hair clean by washing it with the soap. I don't know how would you call it. This was not a bar of soap. This was the soap that we used to lubricate the machinery. And we didn't have hot water, so we used the coffee, because it was also from beets, only it was very dark. We washed our hair in it, but it did not help. Our normal work after our 12 hours of work was to look through our clothes, and all the lice were sitting in the seams, and squeeze them. And you know, there was no shame already, everybody did it. So while we were in the showers, the German came and they made vulgar remarks about the women bathing. We did not bathe, of course, with the men, but they could come and look at us. This has this, and this has such breast, and this has a round behind. This was so dehumanizing, but it did not already affect us because we were not human. But what I remember the other day, there was a town idiot. This was in Skarżysko yet, before we came to Częstochowa. And he was in charge of the latrine. You know what a latrine is. There were many holes, and every time he was walking in this shit, excuse me. He was walking in it, he was wearing the rubber boots, and he was looking at us that we were squatting. And I think I forgot it, all the years I forgot it, came to me last week. And I think that this was the last straw. Or one of the last ones. We were not human, we had no feelings.
When you talk about straw, they didn't use straw. Straw was too good for us. But they used for the purpose of straw as a mattress. They used wood shavings. Wood shavings.
I remember once in Skarżysko, beside this place that the women lived, like in zoo, what I told you. I didn't live there, thank God. There was, was not enough place in the zoo. So we lived in barracks. There were 60 women to one little room. There were 4 bunks from raw wood, the unshaved wood. And on this we got made out of paper. They had sacks, but this was woven paper, and we were to go there, and there was straw and to fill it. I don't remember if it was clean straw or not. The lice came anyhow. There's no question about it.
And
so we were
worse than the lice were the bed bugs.
Bed bugs, yeah.
We called them
rat invasion.
Yeah, they were, while you slept, they just were falling on you and eating you, and blood was running because when you killed a bed bug, it just...
And it stunk. Oh, God, does it stunk. So we lived in the barracks, and we had, each of us in turn had to take care of cleaning the barrack. The bunks were four stores high, 4 bed bunks, yeah? And, as we were not human, as I told you, let's say above me was a girl who was dying. And she picked up the lice from her and she threw it down. We were there or we were not there. She threw it down. And the lice were still alive. They walked wherever they wanted. And you couldn't even be mad at her. She didn't know anymore what's going on, and we didn't want to tell that she's sick because she would be killed right away. I remember one time some Jew committed something terrible, probably stole a piece of bread or stole something, I don't know. Probably not, he didn't kill no one, that I know. And he was hung. And the Jewish policeman, the Germans chose so and so many people to be Jewish policemen. And they had to listen to the Germans, to be bad to us. So I remember when there was the hanging, we already knew about it. They came to the barracks with whips, and everybody out. And we had to go out there was a big lot where the gallows was made, and we were supposed to stand and watch. And who did not put the head down who didn't put the head up, the eyes up, was so badly beaten with whip.
You were
Because-
made to watch a hanging.
Huh?
You were made to watch a hanging.
The hanging. Yeah. And God forbid if they caught you, the Germans or the Jewish police, that we didn't have our eyes open. But you know what? It didn't make any difference on us. We already didn't have feelings. We tried not to look, but to look, so we looked. So we were not human at this point already. Then after 2 years of this thing, we were sent to Częstochowa, where Irvin worked, to the bigger factory. We got there on top of the factory was a huge room, huge, but still it was not for 1,500 girls. And we were posted there. You know, while we were in the barracks, if we needed to go out at night to the bathroom, to the latrine, we could not. We were not permitted to go out. So we sat on the windowsill and did what we had to do. Or we urinated in the can in which we took soup. This was nothing to us. You squint your eyes, but it was nothing to us. In this big room, we couldn't do it. And it was just terrible. It was just terrible. At the end of this huge room was the supervisor, a German doctor. We called her Frau Doktor. I don't think that she was a doctor, that's what she was called. She entertained always the Germans. She had, you know, blankets were around her bed, and she had a corner there. So it was like a little room in the huge room where the 1,500 girls were. And the cook was our very good friend. My friends and me, we shared the bunk. And he, because he was a cook, and the Germans, the soldiers, the guard and so on needed something from him, they let him, you know, they didn't look very much at him. So he came to us, brought us sometimes a little bit food. And one night, he stayed there while the German boyfriend of this Frau Doktor came. God, what do we do? This cannot happen. He cannot be in the crowd of the girls. We put him under our dirty blanket. You know, we were in bed on the bunk, and we put him there so that the German will go to his girlfriend and he will be safe and we will be safe. He probably would get nothing because they needed him, and we would be punished very severely. And after he already went there in the corner, then he ran out. But he was helping us very much. He was helping us, and he was helping us in the moment. We did not know that he was a Jewish man, that he was in the underground, had connection with the underground. But at the last moment, before the liberation, he went out in the street and saw that the Germans were gone, and he already came with an armband as militia and had a gun. So the underground was in touch with him. Later we found out about it.
Same bunk, always?
They were 2 bunks together, 4 bunks up. So on each bunk were 2 girls. When we came in, we got blankets, horse blankets, that with the time they were out. So in order to keep the torn blanket together, we somehow got, I talk about me, got the straw mattress in which we stuffed straw and sewed it to the torn blanket. So it was very hard, because it was very hard, but at least it covered us. There was no change of linens, there were no linens, there was dirt. There was terrible dirt, and we really didn't care. But you know, after the war, when I met Irvin and we decided to go together, I needed to go to have my hair cut because I had so many, I used the acetone, and we all did it, acetone that we cleaned the machinery, pour on our heads. So at least there we didn't have lice, but they were the eggs. And I had to go to have my hair shorn after the war. I didn't want to have the eggs. I was ashamed to go to a barber. I was ashamed to go to a barber. Today I say, I was an idiot. Why was I ashamed? Did I do it? But you know, I was not, again I tell you, I was not a human being.
You believed yourself that you were not a human being?
Yeah. I had no pride, no feeling. You know, gradually, thank God, it came back. Thank God. But at this point, no. You see, when we were not really liberated of all this. Yeah, by the way, you asked me if I got beaten one time. I got beaten so severely one time that till today I have my vertebra is degenerated. Because and I don't want to go in detail what it was, 30 girls were called to come Sunday. This Sunday was we were from night shift coming to from day shift coming to the night shift. So means that we had one night free, one day free, and then the night. But we were called Sunday to come to work. Something happened that was not our fault. It was unfortunately one of our fellow Jews helped the Meister, let me tell about it, to steal a secretary's coat. The Meister needed money. He wanted to sell the coat. He sent the Jew to take the coat, wrap it, and take it out. We saw it, how he carried it out. Suddenly, the SS came. Who stole the secretary's coat? You? No. You? No. All the 30 girls? No. If you will not say, every 10 girls will be killed. Of course we were frightened, but we could not say that we saw him taken out on his own on the German order. How could we say it? And then they called two policemen, bring a hassock, a chair like this, only lower. We had to kneel, put our front of our body on the chair, and a policeman was sitting on our neck, and they started to beat us with sticks, you know, broomsticks, which were very hard, and two masters on one behind. So some girls were crying, please let me go, I didn't do it, please let me go. I apparently am a very hard person. I said, a German will not hear me crying. I didn't say anything. They beat one after the other, all the 30 girls, but very, very severe. Cried, some cried, and they were put aside. After the 30 were through, they took us again. And then, I don't remember if they beat all of us, or this one that didn't cry, with a hose, rubber hose, full hose, not empty hose. It was not a hose, it was a, how do you call it? Like a rubber hose, only full.
Truncheon.
Truncheon.
And they beat me so badly that I fell, that I fainted. I remember that I was woken up by a bucket of water thrown on me, and they still beat me. I was beaten the most. There was another girl who was skinny. Maybe she was beaten as much as I. I was not as skinny, and it didn't show on her. But I know that when we went to the bathroom, latrine, I had to take off my pants to show my girls because they wanted to see the map that was on my behind. And believe or not, I did not get a penny from the Germans. I got $1,000 for my lost teeth, and my papers were this heavy from, the lawyers. And they decided, German doctor here in Nashville, German doctors here in Nashville decided that I am 25% invalid. The Germans decided that so and so many years passed, so I am only 15% invalid because I am getting better. And if I would like to come to Germany to the court, I might get something, pension or something. You see, not in their life I would go to Germany or to Poland. I don't want their money, I don't want anything because they cannot pay me for anything. So, and then one day came the liberation, because really it was not liberation. Irvin worked on the same department as I. I was helping myself in order not to starve with sewing for the German women. I was sewing for them. And at night I was dreaming, I was a designer, and I was dreaming a design of a dress. And in the morning they brought old dresses, and from 2 dresses make me one. So I dreamed this style, and I made it for them. You ask where I had the needle, the thread. The thread I stole. I stole the thread from the packages that the munitions, the bullets were packed. This was a woven belt. And I stole the belt. And then I pulled the thread out, and I had a thread to sew. The Germans didn't ask me from where I had the thread. But they gave me an additional piece of bread, they gave me something brought from home to eat, which was fine. It was not the price of the dress that I made, but it was additional food. So this helped me really to survive. And there was a moment in my life and my bunkmate that we both were working very hard to sew. She also was she was a dressmaker. And we worked very hard. And we had a girl who, when we could afford to buy, because what we ever had, which was not much, we traded with the Polish people. And she cooked for us outside on the pit, in the pit. She cooked some soup for us and she ate with us. Anyhow, after the war, all the girls that we used to help came to me to work. And they were, at 4 o'clock they said, this is enough, you are going for a walk, you and your husband go for a walk, and we will be cleaning the house, and we will, the friendship stayed, which was wonderful, after the war. But the liberation itself was not a hooray. The Germans just disappeared. We saw that something going on. We saw through the windows that the fire is all around, far away, but fire. Something going on, and we didn't know what. But we saw that the Germans were very agitated, something going on. And suddenly, one by one, we didn't see them anymore. But the Ukrainians, how was it called? How were they called? No. They were Ukrainians guard. They were the ones that ran away from the Russian and came over to the, I forgot.
The Germans.
What was the army called? Anyhow, they were...
Warsaw.
Yeah. They were even worse than the Germans. I mean, they didn't have business to kill us, but they were bad people. And they were still on guard. And we started to hide, to go, to, we took our belongings, which was this much, under the arm, and walking, where to hide? In the basement. And there is a guard, you have to hide behind the post. And they also disappeared eventually. And it was already night, and I saw Irvin walking with a bunch of people. And he came to me and asked me, do you have something to eat? And I said, no. He said, we have a bread. And they were about 20 people for one bread. And the bread was very bad bread, but doesn't matter. This was something to fill
with a loaf of bread.
Stomach, yeah. And he hid us in a German bathroom. We didn't know what's going on at this time. Then Irvin went to the kitchen, left us there. He went to the kitchen and he saw that the friend of ours prepared kettles of coffee. I don't remember what coffee. This probably was not real coffee, maybe was. It was hot drink. So he already knew that the Russians are in. He was already in town, the friend, and came back, as I told you.
I went myself.
You went later on. And there was not, the Russian did not come to liberate us. We opened the gate. We stayed in touch as long as she was alive. She was living in Israel after the war. But, you know, people who could not make decision for ourselves. For me, Irvin made a decision. Maybe I would be there too. But Irvin said never to be in the beginning, never at the end, always in the middle. So we were not there.
You had a chance to change your mind, which way to move.
And in the last moment, there was one German who was an honest man, I think. He ran into the magazine where the bread was stored, and he threw the bread in the masses. He threw breads, and who caught it got bread. And this was the bread that Irvin had for the 20 people.
Yeah.
So when we walked out, it really was not a hooray, we are free. There was no joy, there was no feeling.
Now tell me again when that was.
The night, this was, the night of January 16 of 1745.
Of 1945.
Yeah. And this is our Liberation Day. This is what we really celebrate. This is a new chapter of our life.
Can you add anything from his story of this period of time?
No, but I would like to then do, because I interrupted something before when those German army people came with bicycles.
Not bicycles, motorcycles.
Motorcycles. And they killed the little children. Since when I had a constant nightmare, I felt that I am responsible, but I didn't do nothing to save the children.
Irvin, you saw the Germans kill the children?
So did
right.
You did too. And
but
you had a nightmare.
Yeah, because I feel that I should have done something, scream, jump with I was strong. I don't know, something.
Something very important which you didn't say, how you save your brother. This is very important, say it. When Irvin was put to decide to go to work, his brother was taken to the other side to go for that. And Irvin said, no, I will not let my brother go, and he ran to be together with him. And then the German started to beat him and said, no, you go there. And he said, no, I am going here. And then one of the, was it a Meister also or what?
No, it was like that. They wanted to catch the last thing they can get from us, they wanted to get. So the German officer was standing, and we were passing by, and he was deciding yet what to do with us, because there was a truck, the last truck, that was supposed to go to the cemetery. So he was seeing if there was some older people or something, send them to the cemetery. And I saw what's happening, so I put my brother in front of me so that I would see what happens to him. and then I would decide what to do.
This was before he was put on the other side, Pap. You don't remember it? Okay.
Yeah, listen. And so I come here where the watches are in a basket. There are new watches.
Everybody that was passing had to throw
Had to
his
throw
belongings.
his watch in, gold
Rings
coins,
and whatever.
gold rings, diamonds, anything of value had to be thrown into the basket. So when I came over there, so he says for my brother to go to the truck, the German. So I said, all right, I go with him. So he says, do you know where you're going? I don't care. He says, you go to the dev. Nobody's going to come back alive from the truck. So here in the middle of the market stood the German that was responsible for the whole transaction with Jews sending here, there, and so on. And I recognized him because I used to go with an uncle of mine. I used to go and paint in German homes and renew them and so on. And I used to paint in the apartment of that German.
What a difference.
Yeah. Anyhow, so so when he said that I have to go over with my brothers, I ran to
this German.
To this German, and I told him my brother is
Strong.
He's strong. He's 13 years old, but he's strong. He can work.
He was younger.
He was younger. He was 12 years old. So
apparently the German got a change of heart, and he probably had child at this age.
Nothing, no, but it was the other one that I know. But so he says to me, okay, go back in line. So that shows you who survived, who did. So in that moment, he said, go back in line. I did not go into the line of people that were throwing the money, the gold, the watches into that basket. I went into the line of the people that passed already the basket. So I didn't have to throw nothing in.
But say about your brother, how you saved him and the children.
And while I was over there arguing with the main officer, there comes a German. But that same night before, he killed himself, many Jews. But here he came and interfered. He says, those few children.
There were 13 children.
The last 13 children from our city of 120,000 Jews. The last 13 children. He says, die paar Kinder kann ich noch gebrauchen. Those few children I can still make use of.
That what?
These few children I can use for work.
I was so made use
thank
of
to Irvin that he stood like that, and these people told me about it later.
Now, let me ask you. He said when he started telling the story, it was about the Germans killing children.
Right.
And his nightmare of not being able to do anything. And you moved him to tell a story about saving his brother where he could do something.
Yeah.
But is it not true that most of the time there was nothing either of you could do to help
That's
other
true.
people?
That's true. But this happened so
Yes.
that the German who was standing by, the one that said the few children I could use, apparently had a change of heart because maybe he had a child of this age. These were children 10 to 13, something like this. And thanks to this that Irvin wanted to go to that with his brother. It happened that he saved 13 children.
Yes.
And this I heard not from him, this I heard before I
I
met him.
see. Both of you were in what might be called slave labor camps.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you hear about the death camps? Did you hear what was happening to the Jewish people?
I think at the end we heard something, and
Yeah.
I think that it came
I
from the
did.
underground. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know, but I heard something.
I did hear how we were being sent to work, but we were sent to work people to different camps, and to one place we sent, which was to the railroad, to work at the railroad. And I had an uncle that went also at the railroad, and then there came a decision that all the people now go back into the little ghetto.
Concentrated after the selection.
After the selection, after we were sent away and so on, they went to little ghetto. The ghetto, this part of town, it was the worst shape. The houses, no running water and things like that. So they stuffed them all into a little ghetto. And there in that little ghetto, I met a friend, I don't remember his name.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, a friend who went to school with me, and he was sent to a death camp. And he told me how they killed the Jews in the death camp and how they killed my mother. And he saw it with his own eyes.
And now,
And he ran away from that death camp
train.
in a
Train.
in a special way. You see, they were killing so many people that they had to make a place for everything, for all the materials. Let's say the shoes. They concentrated the shoes and throw it on this mountain of shoes. So they concentrated glasses, throwing on this mountain of glasses. What they would do with it, nobody knew. And when they sent women to go this way and men this way, and to take, everybody should take with him a bar of soap and a towel. We're going to have a shower. And we went into a building which looked like a shower too. The only trouble was that instead of water from the shower heads came out gas.
Yeah, but this you heard afterwards, not at this time.
No, they say that's what I had in ghetto from my friend. My friend told me that.
I am sorry, this we heard afterward. We did not know. But I remember you asked me if we knew what happened to the people. This we don't know. I remember only that one time I was taken out by one of the Polish meisters out to his house to sew for his wife. So they took me away from the machine and got me there. And there, this sound I never will forget. I heard the ta-ta-ta-ta of the train, and I heard, but very subdued because it was far. I heard, but 1,000 people must have said it. Shema Israel, Shema Israel. What means, Hero Israel, what happens to us? And this I never will be able, as I forgot many other things. This one thing I never can forget. I hear
Sounds
it constantly in my ears.
coming from the rail cars. Where were the sounds coming from?
From the trains.
From the train.
But I did not know that they are going, to be eliminated. That it will be such a scientific,
Yeah.
designed
And
murder.
no other people, no other nation would have been able to perform what the Germans did.
Today we see that there are other Holocausts, but they are not this premeditated, scientific premeditated. These were the scientists.
Factor of that.
Educated people.
Yes.
You see, you asked me about my education. My education was the concentration camp.
Yes.
This was my education.
What happened to both of you at liberation? How did the Russians treat you?
No, the Russians treated us okay. First of all, when we walked out, Irvin, who knew the city, took us to
Now, what city were you in?
Częstochowa.
Aha.
This was the house
At
in
liberation.
Częstochowa.
All right.
So we went to, he took us to, what was it? What? This was at this time when he took us, the Germans left it as a German hospital. And he took all the group to the building. And every few people took one room there. And Irvin took a kitchen. Because when there was a stove, we could cook. Some funny things happened too, because he started to bring food from he knew where the restaurants were in the city. So he suspected that there would be food. And he really brought to this kitchen. We were there at this time, 4 or 6 of us, I don't remember. There was also a bunk bed, 4 of us, I think. And he brought some potatoes. He brought some synthetic cheese, some marinated mushrooms. That's what he found. And I cooked it all together. I did not know how to cook. And sorry to say that Irvin, who was hungry, didn't eat it, because I mixed it all together. And I did not know how to cook. I had to ask, how long do you cook an egg to be soft? Because when I left home, at this time the girls were not permitted to go to the kitchen. So I didn't know to cook, and during the war I didn't have the experience. We ate what we got. Yeah.
Did you tell me how the two of you got together?
So eventually, as I told you, we were in the kitchen the first night, all 4 of us. And then, I don't know, the next day there were 9 people in 2 rooms in an apartment that Irvin found was empty apartment. The Germans left. The food was on the table. Apparently they were disturbed during dinner. Irvin told us not to touch the food. It could be poison in it. We found some, they were beds. In the bedroom were 2 beds, and in the other room were beds too, so the 9 people thought that we will sleep there. The windows were broken out by the bombardment, and the men took the coconut runners and they nailed them to the windows. They cut them, they nailed them, so it was not as cold. But eventually we all 9 found ourselves in the kitchen in front of the stove, a coal stove, sleeping the night on mattresses. We brought the mattresses to the kitchen. It was so cold that we brought the mattresses to the kitchen. And of course we didn't change like we stood, so we took that. Then the next day, the janitor went to the Russian headquarters and said, here are some people in the apartment, they ruined the apartment, which we did. And the Russian came and said, we need it for Russian soldiers or officers. And we had to move. Irvin went out in the street and met a friend. And the friend said, you know, there is a couple that they have additional
Two
room.
apartments.
And the Russians, no, additional room. And the Russians want to take it. And they would rather see you there. These were not Jewish people, of course. They rather see you there than the Russians. And so we got a room and a kitchen. And I was the housewife for the 3 men. These were 3 friends, he and his 2 friends. And one day, if you want to hear it, you really want to hear it?
I'm told that we're out of time, Elizabeth.
Okay.
And
So I rather
have
not
a
then.
number of additional questions. I think we're going to have to book another hour sometime for me to finish, because there are a lot of different
Okay.
things, including what you've learned from this, and I haven't even had a chance to ask you about.
I told you that this is really 2
That's right.
interviews.
So
not one.
let's schedule another hour and finish, and I'll remember. And yes, I do want to hear that.